So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Welcome to Empowered Woman with EWWGW, a radio show addressing the many challenging issues impacting women today and supporting the integration of balanced feminine power in the modern world. For more information on Empowered Woman with EWWGW, visit our website www.EWWGW.com. Now here is your host, Miss EWWGW.
Hello, beautiful ladies, and welcome to Empowered Woman with EWWGW radio show, where we explore the many facets of being healthy, balanced, well-informed, and empowered women. I'm your host, EWWGW. This hour we'll be looking at feminine empowerment through indigenous wisdom. Not so long ago, many indigenous societies were matriarchal rather than patriarchal. To this day, there's an understanding and honoring of the true feminine in indigenous beliefs and traditions that most of our modern societies have lost. What does indigenous wisdom have to teach us about being empowered as women? How can we embrace the earth-based mysteries of the feminine and bring them back into our daily lives? What effect will it have on the world at large if we do? With us this hour to explore the magical, mystical concept of feminine power from an indigenous perspective is Sandra Corcoran. Sandy is an integrative coach, shamanic teacher, researcher, writer, and indigenously trained dream decoder. Author of Shamanic Awakening and the meditative CD sold out, she co-created Star Process, a spiritual retrieval modality. Mentored by indigenous wisdom keepers for over 35 years, she's taught throughout North, South, and Central America, England, Ireland, Italy, France, and Egypt. She offers yearly journeys to the sacred sites internationally. Her website, starwalkervisions.com. Sandy, my friend, thank you so much for joining us on Empowered Woman.
Thank you for having me, Gwilda.
It's always such a pleasure. So,
Thank you, likewise.
So, what shamanic forms have you studied?
Well, my primary teacher was Seneca Elder Grandmother Twyla Nietzsche. I have studied with Lakota people, with Apache people, with many South American indigenous people such as the Quero, as well as Toltec teachers and deer dance teachers. So I have a wide spectrum, and though I am not an indigenous person myself in the sense of being Native or South American indigenous, I have been very blessed over the years to have been welcomed into their families and tribes and taught a variety of things by them.
Do you find that there's a lot in common between practices?
Yes, I do. In terms of nature beings, the elements, the dream time, I do find that although there is disparity for a wide variety of reasons, that indigenous people do seem to honor the feminine much more than the current patriarchal society, though they are still, I think, having issues amongst themselves with some of this. But as you mentioned in your opening, in the early years, matriarchy was very much a part of all of these families. It was an important balance to the patriarchy, and I think that's what we've lost is the balance.
Yeah, the balance is the key, isn't it? You know, it's supposed to be teamwork here, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what was interesting early on for me in working with some of these tribal people is that when I first came as this, naive woman coming out of the 60s thinking, it had to be women's lib, etc. And I would sit amongst the women because the women would often sit in one area and the men in the other. Initially, I was like, wait a minute, this isn't what it's supposed to be, until I started to listen and until I started to feel. And I recognized that there was great balance between the two, something that I hadn't experienced before, and equally important to both. And there was a time for sharing, but there was also a time for teaching what each of those aspects of ourselves are about. And I found that really liberating in ways that I hadn't felt liberated before.
I know exactly what you're talking about, because that was the first thing that struck me. We're probably the same vintage. And it was like, what do you mean we have to sit in the women's? But the power of that and that beautiful sisterly agreement. And a lot of the point was, how do we embrace what we are so that we can help the entire tribe, we can help the entire people?
Exactly, because it's not either or. It's really a balanced understanding of what we want our families, our children to inherit, and that isn't either or. It's both.
Yeah, within and without, yes?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. How did you get on the path working with Indigenous mentors?
Well, unfortunately, death has been a big part of my teaching in this lifetime, and my first daughter passed away, and at that point, different Indigenous women came and sought me out and told me that I had promised to put my feet to a path, and it was time that they were there to teach me. And my first 5 teachers were actually all women, even though during that time there were a lot of men like Sun Bear and Wallace Black Elk and many others that were teaching in the privacy of their homes and space. It was the women who first taught me. And after a certain point, they kind of released me to go to South America and start to learn from the men, because even though there had to be a balance of male and female and within and without, they also saw this union between the eagle of the north and the condor of the south, and that had to be balanced as well.
Would you mind describing that a little bit? I mean, we've heard that legend, or at least a lot of us have. How do you see it from your perspective?
Well, South America, as it's been explained to me, as I understand it, is more the energy of the heart, and eagle in north is the energy of the mind, and that the mind and the heart have to be in balance to be able to be discerning and compassionate enough to bring something unique both to yourself, to the tribe, to your children moving forward. So in the same way that even though you and I in this lifetime are female, within ourselves we're really divine masculine and divine feminine, hoping to see how to balance that seed. And in the sense of Indigenous teachings, they also believe that the heart and the mind are intrinsically connected. And, one of my teachers used to say that's the longest road we're ever going to have to walk.
And now's the time to walk it, too, isn't it?
Quickly.
Yeah, boy, I hear you there. A lot of the stuff that goes on in the world, the negative stuff, really couldn't happen if people were united in heart and mind. The atrocities just couldn't happen. And how long ago did we get away from that? I mean, it seems like we've been there before.
I think it's all cycles. I think there's this 0-point cycle that we keep returning to, that Terence McKenna explained really best, that we keep going round and round in tighter and tighter circles of experiencing similar things until we really get that we're all one. I mean, one of the greatest legacies that Graham Twyla used to teach me is that this isn't a universe in the sense of how we see it. It's a uni-world, and we're all a part of that uni-world. And until we understand that I am another yourself, like the Mayan might suggest, that we're going to keep repeating these patterns, and that's the foible, I think, of humanity.
Mm. Now, when did Graham Twyla Niche? She passed, didn't she?
Yes, she passed a number of years ago now.
Yeah, I thought we lost her. What tribe was she from?
The Seneca. Seneca people, which are part of the Iroquois Five Nations people, who were actually the ones that helped us with our Declaration of Independence.
Now, she was an amazing woman and a great loss to us.
Yeah.
How can shamanic practice empower women today?
Well, one of the things that the shamanic or the indigenous societies taught is that they believe that we each possess an original medicine, kind of like a kind of personal power that is ours and ours alone, and that the greatest challenge in our lives is to find that seed of power and let it bloom. So even though we're all layered with childhood memories and cultural memories and religious memories, we need to learn how to release those layers of expectation, and that there is no perfection really or direct line of feeling empowered, that you have to learn how to empower yourself by being in relationship with yourself. So one of the ways that some of my teachers would teach me is being in alignment with yourself can be through the dream time. It can be honoring the elements. It can be doing mindfulness meditation. It can be through many, many different things, but there's no one panacea. It's really about taking the action to change the story, because we all come in with a story.
Stories are huge in Indigenous practices, aren't they?
Right. There are always lessons and ways to teach both the young and the old, different ways to perceive or move forward or get a different perspective on the lesson. One of the things I had to learn basically because of coming out of my own childhood was that challenge isn't a punishment. It means if you look at it from a different perspective, it brings you more personal awareness, and hopefully through that awareness you can find some growth to change the way you're perceiving your story, because the worst thing any of us can do is to stay stuck in our story. There's no process to that, and we have to become more conscious of how to self-evaluate and move past what we've accepted as this personal truth that we can't be empowered. And I think a lot of women feel that because
I agree. I'm sorry, we're going to have to pick up on this on the other side of a pause.
Okay, no problem.
Sandy and I will be back after this commercial break. You're listening to Empowered Woman with EWWGW Radio Show, EWWGW.com, coming to you through the All Women's Radio Network, AWRN.net. It's hard to listen to the news without realizing we're living in volatile, unprecedented times. Yet never has there been such an opportunity to transform the human condition. As old structures fail, where can we find the guidance to co-create a better way? Find Your Path Home is an ever-evolving, leading-edge information, education, and healing resource center designed to support and guide you on your path to unity and enlightenment. Based on sound principles employed by shamans worldwide, we provide techniques that can support you through the current transitions, offering online shamanic classes, international long-distance shamanic healing sessions, complimentary Mission Evolution radio episodes and Stairway to Heaven TV vignettes, seminars, retreats, and much more. All of this can be found on findyourpathhome.com.
Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
Welcome back. This is Empowered Woman with EWWGW radio show dedicated to redefining and empowering the feminine. Remember, past episodes are available on our website, EWWGW.com. I'm your host, EWWGW. Our guest this hour is Sandra Corcoran. Her website, starwalkervisions.com. Sandy, we were just starting to talk about stories, and it seems like we inherit stories, and if we never re-examine them, then we live those stories. How can we use stories to empower ourselves rather than entrap us?
I think stories, myths, dreams all have different archetypes to them, and often we identify with those archetypes, and then we claim them and own them. And I think if we had to learn anything, is that everything is just energy moving in various cycles, and that we have the capacity to change our own stories by looking at it from a different perspective. And that's often hard because life can be very hard for many people, especially women of color and indigenous women. They're confined to sort of this economic disparity sometimes, or this culturalism that threatens their connection. And I think that, in the suffragette time, we had this movement in the 1900s for vote, and then we had women's lib in the 60s. But it's more complex for women of color and race because it's been ongoing for centuries with this old patriarchal thought. So there's this century-old legacy or stories of colonial or segregationist disempowerment. And so the stories help change the impact of how we're seen, both in how we portray ourselves and how we see others. That's what I found so uplifting about this last election, is there were so many more women of color and race that stepped into roles of empowerment, which means we're changing our story.
Exactly. I mean, we trap ourselves in our stories. We aren't trapped by the situations.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you started talking about archetypes. Would you go into that a little bit more and how we can use archetypical expression to empower ourselves as women?
Well, I think fairy tales are one of the biggest archetypes that we can use to change the story, and not kind of from that Walt Disney model of, we're the fairy princess, or we're going to be kissed by the prince, and our whole lives will change. I think.
Oh, Sandy, I had my heart set on that. I've been waiting.
I did too. But I do think women, juggle over half the current workforce, both home and children and household bills, a lot of single and divorced families. And, I'd like to think of archetypes more as stepping into kind of the superhero aspect of what we can be, with discernment and acknowledgement that we're not, Wonder Woman, but that we can kind of encourage ourselves and each other as women. I think that's so important and so potent to have a sisterhood as opposed to this envious Barbie doll mentality that offsets us as women not being kind to each other. But even in native traditions, the archetypes of animal totems, they can help you step into not the fact that I'm an ant or a buffalo or an eagle, but that those skill sets that those animals offer can be skill sets and archetypes that we hook into to change our storyline.
It's amazing to watch, too, isn't it? It's like, I think that, people kind of misunderstood a lot of your totems in that, oh, well, my totem is this or my totem is that. But actually, they're a representation of the frequency that'll help us balance our lives.
I have a great story for that. So when I was working with Graham Twyler on what my totems were, one of them was ant, and I was so dismissive of that until she told me, well, wait a minute. Ant lives in community. It helps community. It has patience. It has tenacity. And at that time, I was not a very patient person. So really what she was telling me was to bring in the wisdom of the ant to maybe have more patience in my life and be able to claim more of what I wanted at that point.
It's just amazing to watch that work out. And the ones that come to you are always perfect, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Lesson givers for sure. How do you feel working with shamanism has empowered you as a woman?
I think it's helped me step out of the role of poor me, which I think I had a lot of growing up. I also think it has really empowered me in terms of recognizing that, like I said earlier, everything is just energy and movement, and when I'm stuck, something within me has to move. I've learned to stop making myself small. I do think I've been blessed with education, and I think education is a very important piece of reconnecting. But I've also, through my native teachers, been reconnected to the land and the elements, and I think Earth is a primary teacher. So those things have empowered me, and some of the simplest rites that I do each day, whether that's prayer or just offering tobacco or something very simple, can really bring me back into a place of balance and kind of that sense of peace in my heart, which this world doesn't, it can really shake us loose from that on a minute-to-minute basis.
You really can. And don't you think that women, because we're cyclic and our cycles are actually based on the moon and movement of the moon and the natural world, don't you think that we suffer even more from the separation from nature?
Yes, I do. And, I would like to see more goddess men in the world. I think they have to really move back into their own cycles because I think men have cycles too. But I do think we as a people, and I mean that as humanity, have really stepped away from the gifts that the earth offers and the cycles and the, one of the most empowering things is both imagination and emotion. And those things, they're even proving today, I know I'm getting off subject a little bit here, but that if you take children with ADHD and you bring them out into the land and you let them play with the dirt, that there's something in the dirt that allows their body to come into balance. If you let them hug a tree or be near trees, there's something in that exchange of energy that calms them down. And so I think we all, men, women, children, elders, have cycles, but at different times in our life, the cycles are different. And I know in a lot of the indigenous tribes that a woman really wasn't in her full medicine power until she had stopped mensing. So even though it was important to know the cycles and take the time to do certain meditations or prayers or creative work during your menses, once that stopped, the way the emotions affected you through those cycles helped you to be more centered in the work you did for the tribe, moving into a new cycle, a different level.
Yeah, the elder is a beautiful place to be and a very powerful one for just those reasons. We've all heard of Mother Earth and Father Sky. Why is the feminine associated with the earth and the masculine with the sky?
I think in part, and I could be very wrong on this is just my own personal opinion, I think because the earth brings forth so much, because it so much grows on it, and children grow within the womb of mother. So all the different elements and civilizations like trees and insects and birds that grow within the element of the earth, I see it as much more feminine. Its core is magnetic, which is much more feminine. And I would say it's more Father Sun than Father Sky. That's just my belief, because the sun penetrates just like the male does to impregnate women to bring forth. So there's that union of the light of the sun and the empowerment of the rays of warmth to the earth, which brings her through her cycles. The sun obviously goes through its own cycles, but it's much more observable on the earth because this is where we live.
Mm-hmm. Cycles within cycles, wheels within wheels. Mm-hmm. Many women have totally lost earth connection and have been brought up to be afraid to go out in nature. Why have women strayed so far from their true nature, do you suppose?
Oh, I think there's so many reasons for that, Gwilder. I think nature, if you're out in the woods alone, unsafe things can happen to you. I know that, sexism and violence against Indigenous women has escalated quite a bit out in your side of the country. I think even here, I've had many friends that maybe if they went for a run or a walk in the woods, things could happen. So I think women, out of fear, maybe segregate themselves from nature, and nature is disappearing as we become, as we build and build and build, we lose those places where we can go and connect. One of the things one of my teachers used to suggest for people who lived in the city was to just buy a big plant for their home, and every day just take off their shoes and put their feet in the earth of the plant, because they had to connect in some way to nature. And I think the more we grow, civilization-wise, the less nature is around us. Be that the rainforest or clean rivers, all those things affect us. And I think women separate themselves not only because of the daily chores they have, but because we don't teach as a society. We don't educate how important nature is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hugely important. And I hope to see that coming back into our schools and into our teachings. But it's time for another short pause. Okay. Sandy and I will return to our discussion on the other side of this commercial break. So you stay right there. This is Empowered Woman with EWWGW Radio Show, EWWGW.com, coming to you through the All Women's Radio Network, AWRN.net.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by L.A. Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
Welcome back. This is Empowered Woman with EWWGW Radio Show, EWWGW.com, bringing the latest tools and information to support women during these rapidly shifting times. I'm your host, EWWGW, and our special guest this hour is Sandra Corcoran. Her website, starwalkervisions.com. Sandy, many traditional indigenous ways include a casting of a circle or standing in the center of your circle. Would you mind describing what that is and how it can help us become more earth connected?
That's a great question. Let me think how I want to answer that. I think the way that indigenous people see time isn't the same way as the European mindset that has grown up to be the predominant way of looking at the world. When you talk about wisdom wheels or medicine wheels, or even in the Celtic tradition casting a circle, you're always in the middle. So in the middle means it's always available to you to go down any one of the spokes to learn whatever lesson you need to learn to grow your awareness or your ability to hold on to your personal power. So in a more of a European mindset, you're on the outside of the circle looking in, always trying to get to the middle, always trying to get to that seat of power that's yourself. So I think the casting of the circle is more to show you that you're the center of your own universe and that you can create the changes you need as you become the center of your own universe. And that's not said in any kind of, with any hubris or egoic mindset. I mean, you still have to compromise and be discerning and live in a family or live in a community. But there's still this different sense of looking at time and space and breath from the center as opposed to on the outside always trying to get in.
It's a beautiful thing, isn't it? And all the ones that I've studied incorporate the power and the wisdom to be found in the seasons, to be found in the directions, to be found in the elements. And if you're standing in the center of that, if you will, you can always draw upon the element or the time of year or the season or the time of life to counterbalance any imbalance you might be carrying at any given time. Have you seen that work?
Absolutely. Whether it's women's ceremonies or nature ceremonies or indigenous ceremonies, where there's a central fire or you're planting a seed or, you're leading the ritual or you're working within the psychology of the wisdom wheels, you're absolutely right. It counterbalances the imbalance that brought you to the center.
Mm. How can reestablishing our circle help us reengage with Earth connection?
Well, circles are communities. Circles are individuals. Circles are, everything. If you look at nature, everything occurs in this spiral, in this Fibonacci field that looks like a galaxy. And I think that we lose sight of the experiment of ourselves. We get caught up in the doing as opposed to the listening. And I think we have to, as a society, as a global society, we have to listen a lot more to ourselves, to our inner spiritual whisperings, to each other, to other communities that are different than ours, to find not the disparity but the balance. I think a big part is listening.
Listening's huge, isn't it? What are some methods of casting a circle or setting directional space that you've learned?
Well, if it's for the directions, it's obvious that you face each of the directions, and depending on what you're calling in, you start in that direction. In other circumstances, if you're casting a circle to bring in something like in the different Celtic seasonal cycles, like in bulk or or Beltane or any of that. It usually corresponds to an element that you're honoring, and the elements have different placements within the wheel, just like the directions have different placements within the wheel. In Graham's teaching, the philosophy of the Seneca people was about bringing balance between the gifts of birth and the latent talents that would make us up as a whole person. So kind of looking at the wisdom wheel like a clock, each one of those had something that represented our own personal truth. So when you're out of balance with your truth, you would go to that part of the wheel to learn what that needed to teach you. I think, though there are many similarities, there's also differences from people to culture to background.
Right, right. One thing that we've really lost in our society is rites of passage. And, one place I see it is we cling to youth. We stay in maiden until we're forced into mother, and then we still try to stay in maiden, try to stay young, to the point that people are doing Botox and surgery and this and that. What is the cost of losing the rites of passage, and what would be the gift of re-engaging them?
I think the cost, and I don't take away what anybody wants to do to themselves or their body, but I so agree with you. I think, women who are 60 want to look 30. It's not a good look. I think that women who are 18 and 20 already want to be 40, and that doesn't work for them either. I think it's really coming back to that seed and how we want that seed of power within us to bloom. And that at each stage, there's beauty to each stage. The seed is fresh and new, and the initial part that sprouts from the seed has potential and yearning. And then, you get to the fruit or the flower or the blossom, and there's this beauty, there's this transference of energy with new seeds that fall to the ground. Each stage has its beauty, but I think we've lost the context of what that beauty is. And I think that's why we stay stuck. I know a lot of my native teachers used to say that white people, and I'm not discriminating against white people, I'm a white person, we're stuck in the teenage years. That sense of wanting, of yearning, but not giving it the full breadth of time to go through the cycles we need to get to the discernment and understanding. And I see that more and more with young kids today who are on social media, telephones, computers. They want it immediately. You can't keep pulling a carrot out of the ground in the garden to see how long it's got, and it's not going to grow. And
we've certainly lost.
Growing happens in many ways.
Yeah, we've certainly lost deferred gratification concepts, haven't we? How much is that because we're in such a consumer-driven society?
I think it's consumer-driven, but I also think it's this computer social media, and I can see where that brings more people together. There is an advantage to that, but there's also the disparity of not emotionally attaching. And I think without the emotional piece, there's no firm commitment to working through how that seed within you is going to grow. I mean, you look at a seed, it has to weather a rainstorm or a drought or a fire. It has to weather the elements, and I don't think we weather the elements well anymore within ourselves. I'm using that as kind of a metaphor.
Right. And it seems like we have to go through the cycles and go through rites of passage and honor our next step before we can embrace all of them at any given moment and pull up the appropriate one for the time. Yes,
to get the carrot.
Exactly. Let the thing grow. So, we don't have formal rites of passage. Well, maybe you graduate, but if you don't, do you think that it would be valuable for us as women to start gathering in circles and going through rites of passage?
I did that for a long time in my earlier years, and I brought up my daughter that way. Mm-hmm. And there came a time when she really rebelled against that, at the time that most young people do, in those kind of teenage years where they are, Velcro, nothing's going to stick to them, and what mom does is ridiculous. But now that she's in her early 30s, she has really cycled back and told me how valuable those rights were for her as she corresponds with other women her age, and how little they had that allowed them to do that, and how they're really seeking ways to do that with each other now that they didn't have growing up. So now I'm getting gratitude as opposed to how ridiculous I am.
Ridicule. Yeah, I have a son and a daughter, and I brought them both up with all these principles from early age. And both of them, they're adults now, and both of them have expressed to me how much it has empowered their lives. And I had the same response that you did. Oh, Mom, really?
Yes, and I think the empowerment, we're moms, or those who choose to be moms, or we're moms to something, be that a collaborative or the division of a company or a stable of animals. We are mothers, and part of our gift is caretaking, and to not reject that as a very important and powerful gift that we have in this gender, that caretaking is a special part of who we are, and to not throw that away. And it doesn't mean having children.
I would like to put out there that moms, hang in there. If your kids are at the stage where they're rejecting everything, they do tend to come full circle if you don't throw it down their throat.
Yes. You get smart again to them around 22.
Yeah. Well, it comes and goes, but yeah, it's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Yeah. Well, we're going to have to take another short commercial break. On the other side, Sandy, I'd really like to get into dreams. I think women and dreams are a fascinating topic, and you happen to be a dream decoder.
Okay.
Sandy and I will be back shortly to continue our exploration, so don't leave us now. You're listening to Empowered Woman with EWWGW radio show, EWWGW.com. We're coming to you through the All Women's Radio Network, AWRN.net.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Path Home Shamanic Art School has just launched a new online series of classes, Galactic Shamanism, Art of the Ancients, Key to Tomorrow. In these classes, composed and taught by Path Home founder and director EWWGW, you'll learn practical shamanic skills to support your daily life, such as how to build a medicine wheel to access the power of the earth, perform a shamanic journey, create sacred space in which to live and work, empower your life with totem animals, elementals, and fairy folk, and learn the art of accurately reading signs and omens. These tried and true skills are the key to living a powerful, productive life. Visit us at findyourpathhome.com to see the ever-growing collection of classes and leading-edge information to support you during these times of uncertainty and transition. All can be found at findyourpathhome.com.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Ellie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, The 70-Year Cover-Up Exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
Welcome back. This is Empowered Woman with Gwilda Wiyaka Radio Show, EWWGW.com, bringing the latest information to support women as we embrace our true power. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. I always love suggestions from my listeners. Email me, Gwilda at EWWGW.com, and share what's on your mind. Our special guest this hour is Sandra Corcoran. Her website, starwalkervisions.com. Sandy, you are an indigenously trained dream decoder. What exactly is that?
Well, early on when I was working with my teachers, particularly Grandmother Twyla Nietzsche that I mentioned earlier, there are different skill sets that each person has that they are required to develop within themselves if they are to meet their purpose. That was according to her teachings. And one of the things that she suggested early on is I had this propensity to be able to move into the dream time and understand the symbology, the archetypes, the flow of the story, and that would be a very helpful thing kind of in my private therapy practice, because I'm a psychotherapist, to be able to use with other people to help them discover themselves. And I don't quite know how gifts arrive to people, but it's always been very, very easy for me to listen to the person. I always have them read it to me because their voice intonation tells me something too. But it was just a very easy way for me to understand people. And Graham really counseled that that dreams are kind of an important source of spiritual and practical guidance, which is why she always felt we had to express gratitude for the dream, but that ultimately where the guidance of the dream was in the feeling and the feelings that the dream elicited, so that wonderful dreams or even nightmares were always there to teach us something because it was an important link between our inner and outer worlds. And without that awareness to help inform us and disentangle us from our daily concerns, then we couldn't make the appropriate choices to change our outer life based on the story we wanted to change and experience. So I just found it, and still find it, I still use it quite a bit in my practice, just really quite an amazing gift that everybody has. And a lot of people say they don't dream at night, but it's really that they don't remember, because everybody does. It's been scientifically proven. Everybody does dream at night.
I understand that if you're deprived of REM sleep, which is where you dream, that you don't fare well. You know, it's like being deprived of sleep altogether.
Well, yeah, and that's a system that a lot of different people used to bring people to the breaking point, is to not let them sleep.
Not let them sleep, not let them dream, and to you just don't process.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
What's the difference? What's the difference?
Go ahead.
What's the difference between dream interpretation and indigenous dream decoding?
You mean from like a Jungian perspective?
Yeah, you know, we have these Western typical dream interpretation, and I just wondered, is there a difference between that and decoding?
Well, the way I initially learned it was on these wisdom wheels of philosophy that I was taught by Grandmother Twyla, because as I was referencing a few minutes ago in the other part of the segment, is if you're in the center of the wheel, every spoke on the wheel, as if you're looking at a clock, has a different component in terms of helping you bring awareness to your truth. And even though we all express truth in a different way, each of the spokes, which would be the numbers on the clock, provide a certain way for you to learn and decode what you need to proceed. And sometimes we're working with our gifts of birth, which come easier to us, and sometimes we need to face what she called our latent talents, the parts of ourselves that we ignore or deny or even project onto somebody else. And within that structure, you have this inner and outer boundary. And the inner boundary is what you use against yourself, and the outer boundary is what, when you feel attacked or judged or dismissed by somebody in your world, it strikes that outer boundary. And each correspond to a number and a color, and all those represent are just frequencies of vibration. So you're really working with the frequency, even though the teaching comes through a color or a number or a word.
Right, yeah. Everything expresses according to frequency, and the indigenous people really, really understood that and worked with it beautifully, didn't they?
Yes.
Yeah. So we've been talking a little bit about dreams as they come to us as teachers, as indicating where we need to process or where we're imbalance. But then there's a lot of belief from the Hawaiians to the Aboriginals that we dream our future. We dream this world into being. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yes. I think that Indigenous people see the dream time as much more powerful than our waking reality, because our waking reality, we're distracted by so many things. But in the dream time, our subconscious, or that 95% of us that's just underneath the surface, because we're not bound by time or space or dimensionality or breath in the dream time, we get more information. Now, it needs to speak to us through archetypes and symbols and feelings and storylines, but in learning that and paying attention to that, you're able to motivate a difference in your outer world. And many of the Native people even taught that the dreams could help prepare you for death, because each dream time was a little death. And if you could be conscious of your dreams and more conscious as you're crossing in death, you would have more control in your next incarnation and how you worked with what the Buddhist priests call the bardos, those in-between states. So dreams become a very powerful way to empower yourself. And, we started this conversation with empowerment. Everybody dreams, men, women, and children. And it's a wonderful, to command the dream is really, or to learn the dream, because I think it's more the dream that commands us, I think is a very powerful way of changing the story in your outer world.
So if we can change the story of our dreams, we've changed the story in our outer world. So dream is a two-way street. You can either be receiving information or planting something at the quantum level to grow.
Exactly. And you can take that one step further, because when our imagination is one of the most powerful things as a human being we have. So when you wake up, you can use your imagination to further the dream, to further your outer reality.
So yeah, that's what we're doing, isn't it? Is using that skill, that it's frequency mastery, and it's run through the imagination.
Right, and you could listen to anybody from Einstein to Paul McCartney, and they all got a very big piece of either their song or quantum physics in their dream time.
I've heard that so much and experienced it myself. How about precognitive dreams?
Well, there's a lot of debate on that, because a precognitive dream comes through your own lens. So sometimes you can have a precognitive dream and it comes true, and sometimes you have what you think is a precognitive dream and you totally miss the mark. And I think that not all precognitive dreams are information to act on, but I do think they're information to explore to determine whether or not you should act on them. Mm-hmm. Because it's all a life stream of energy filtered through your own lens. So it really depends on the clarity you have. And you can tell by the texture, or at least I can, and I'm sure you can, because we've talked a little bit in the past about this. You can tell by the texture of the dream if it's going to be precognitive, or if it's just something that's moving as a wave through your dreamscape. and you've caught a fragment of it and it doesn't necessarily come true.
There's also a third option, isn't there, where it's if you don't change direction, this is where you're going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those come up really big in terms of our health oftentimes. You're shown things that, are a detriment to your health or would help your health, and a lot of times people ignore that. And in a way, in a part, that's a cognitive dream. But you're always getting messages. And many times it happens way down the road, and suddenly you have this like deja vu moment of, oh, I have felt this before. I've dreamed this before.
Exactly. We're almost out of time. Sandy, what unique skills do you think we as women possess that can help build a better world for tomorrow?
I think if we came back to the basics of what we are as a gender, it would be the ability to have compassion and empathy. It would be the potential to mother something within ourselves or without. I think the skill of listening is a big skill that women need to get back to. And I think that appreciating our bodies for what they are through all the different ages and stages that we might have the honor of moving through, and honoring that as opposed to being afraid of it or trying to change it. I think. Well,
unfortunately, we have come to the end of our time together. Sandy, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Our guest this hour has been Sandra Corcoran. Sandy is an integrative coach, shamanic teacher, researcher, indigenously trained dream decoder, and the author of Shamanic Awakening. Her website, starwalkervisions.com. Remember to join our email family to stay abreast of all the exciting new things we have coming up at EWWGW.com. While you're there, join in the discussion on our blog. This has been Empowered Woman with EWWGW Radio Show, coming to you through the All Women's Radio Network, www.awrn.net. Until next time, dear sisters, stand in your beauty, stand in your truth, and embrace your power. The world needs you and everything you are.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.